segment of Frank Talk is sponsored by the Red Bank Men's Club, celebrating 60 years of service to the greater Red Bank community.
You can't just drop your wisdom on someone if they haven't traveled a certain road to be able to reach what you're or come to the conclusion that you came to, or even understand where you're coming from. But at least you could take the dialogue out there.
I used to live in the world. Really be in the world. Free and sweet talking, good morning, thank you, and nice day. I can't now. Can't be nice to nobody. Nice is such a ripoff. Regular beauty and a smile in the street, it's just a setup. I used to be in the world, a woman in the world. I had a right to the world. Then I moved to Harlem for the setup. A universe, 6 blocks of cruelty, piled up on itself. A tunnel closing.
It's been called Terrible and Terribly Important. The film for colored girls has been a hot button topic even before its release. So today on Frank Talk, we'll be talking frankly with a panel of guests and an audience who have seen the movie to bring us closer to understanding why this film for colored girls has been so boldly debated. I'd like to introduce to you now my guests, who are, to my right, Mark Antonio Henderson, who is a writer and director. He's also the Associate Artistic Director for the Dunbar Repertory Company. Mark has also directed the play for colored girls twice. Next to Mark is Tamara Richardson, who's an educator, licensed professional counselor, a lover of words, and a Monmouth County native of several generations. Next to Miss Richardson is Jerquinton Sutton. He's a seminary student and minister, husband, father, and a member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. I welcome you guys to Frank Talk.
Thank you.
So, Mark, you having directed this play twice, what do you have to say in terms of it bumped up against the movie?
I think when I saw it, I was trying to, sometimes you want to compare, but you don't want to compare. Like people say a book is better than a movie. A movie and a book are two different things, even if the movie is based on a book. Sure. The movie is its own thing. So I was trying to watch it with very open. But at the same time, having directed the piece and been familiar with it, I was curious to see how he was going to fit the poems in and how everything was going to work. It's Tyler Perry's version of For Color Girls. You know what I'm saying? It's his,
What does that mean?
By switching around some of the stuff, he changed a little bit of the context of a few of the poems. So it's his interpretation as an artist of Ntazaki's work. I saw the original production in 77. 77 I saw it.
Okay.
With Trezana Beverly.
Yes.
And I was 14. Now I couldn't quite get it, but I got it. It was very moving and very powerful. And then later on, when I got a chance to direct it, one of the issues that came up, or one of the issues that sometimes comes up, is should a male direct that play? Can a male direct that play? Can he have some type of insight into that play? Or should a woman director direct it? And it's a debate that you hear in theater all the time.
Yes.
I kind of felt like, I'm human first, I guess. I'm a male and I'm human, but I was able to relate to all the stories that were in the play. And it reminded me of some of the women that my mom would, I grew up around her friends. So I was able to relate to some of it.
So then let me ask you this. So do we feel, going back to that question, is it terrible or is it terribly important? It was terribly important for everyone to know the stuff that colored girls we've had to deal with. So that's my take on it. All right. So I thought it was a terribly important film that he took up, had the courage, had the courage.
Yes.
So I think it was very courageous of him to take something like Intuzake's play and do this with it. So can any of you speak to what you're feeling about it being terrible or terribly important?
Right, right. Well, I certainly know that it was terribly important work, and like yourself, I saw the play in New York initially, and I was also just a child. I happened to be at the time, though, also working as a college counselor, and took a group of students to see the play, and it was a mixed group racially, and it was the first time in my life I stood up in a play in the audience and screamed. I was yelling throughout the play. I lied. I was a full-grown woman with children, had been married, and it was very real, and it was so important. It was important to hear this out loud, to not live alone with this information. I did have a closet full of I'm sorries, and I had no room for anything else. I did, so it wasn't just a play, it was real life. And it was happening there on the stage, and it was so wonderful to experience that. The majority of the students who were on the bus that I took from the college were not African American, were not Latino. The majority of them were white students. And there was a debate, though, a heavy debate on the bus coming home, and the African American students were commenting on it and how, oh, it was so powerful, it was really such a good play about us. And one of the white students spoke up and said, that play was also about me. This was about my life and my story as a woman. And I think that was so important. I think some of the debate and some of the discussion that's going on about this, and I've read some of the reviews, lots of folks, it's for black people. Well, it's certainly not for black people. It certainly talks about some of our trials, but it's certainly not only for black people. It definitely spoke to women, for sure, and it spoke to lots of things. So I think it was terribly important then, it's terribly important now, and maybe that's a sad note that it's so terribly important today, that I saw this so many years ago and that today it's all still so current and so appropriate and so, right on time. So terribly important, my vote.
Okay.
Well, somebody walked off with my clothes. Somebody walked off with all my clothes.
Yeah.
I think the movie was very important.
Yeah.
Hats off to Tyler Perry for being courageous to put a film on like this. Let me put my theological hat on for a moment, if I may. This right here is the church. These are perfect candidates for the church. People who are flawed, people who are broken, people who have been through life experiences. Come on in. Church can bring you healing. We can bring Christ to you. They can bring salvation. We can bring deliverance to set your soul and your spirit free. One of the things about the movie that I didn't see enough joy. I saw a lot of brokenness, but I didn't see joy. Understanding this, growing up in the inner city in Newark, we understood what this was all the time. This is our context. This was nothing new. And to hear, especially in our community, that this movie was not good. I mean, you can always hear reviews or a commercial, so to speak, voice to say what is good and what is not good. We understand that. But from our context, regardless, we go out and support Tyler Perry, but we support in this movie because these are issues that portray the human conditions. And I felt like, this is just a great opportunity not only to understand, even as a father and even as a minister, that you can look at this from a different perspective. There's hope within some of these characters at the end of the movie. You see how it's transpired. So what a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to take a look at it.
Mark, what did you think? Is it terribly important? Was this a terribly important film at this time? At this time in, you know, our community, understanding where we are in respect to relationships. Speak to that.
I think that it's terribly important, and I think it has the landmark of a classic. I mean, for Colored Girls, the theater piece is considered an American classic piece of theater. American, not black theater. American classic piece of theater. And one of the hallmarks of a classic is that it's timeless. Another classic, Raisin in the Sun, was in 1954. It speaks just as loud today as it did in 1954. So Ntozake definitely came out with a classic. I think it's terribly important to introduce this work to a new generation of people. And I think that's what Tyler Perry has done. A lot of people knew about it, but a lot of people didn't know about it. A lot of younger people never heard of it. And they say, oh, let's go see this. What is this? For Colored Girls, what is this? So to me, that's why it's most important, is to direct them to the story. And I would hope that people will go further and go back to the source material as well.
I think as long as we get people to come to the table to talk about these issues, I think that that's part of the reason that we have art. That's part of the reason why we have films and plays, so that people can actually come, sit together, and look at it in a different way. And from the down low to the domestic violence to the date rape, all of these are issues that are very contemporary. But like someone said on the panel, what really makes something a classic is when you can take it and put it in any different context, whether it's the 1950s, or the 1990s, or 2010, and it still makes sense and it still has some relevance. So I think it spoke volumes about this play that it still made sense today, and it really is a classic.
1955 was not a good year for little black girls. Toussaint said, let's go to Haiti. I said, aye, and packed some very important things in a brown paper bag so I wouldn't have to come back. Then Toussaint and I took the Hodiamont streetcar to the river. Last stop, only 15 cents, because there wasn't nobody could see Toussaint except me. And we walked all down through North St. Louis, where the French settlers used to live, in little brick houses all huddled together with barely missing shingles and windows uneven, with colored kids playing and women on low porches sipping beer.
So reading these poems, seeing the play, I heard things that I never heard out loud before about my own experience. And here is a woman who was able to dive deep into the river of human experience, and because of her skill, come back up and put it in words. And I think, as you were saying, it's melody.
Nice.
That you have extremes showing things that then said to me as a person who's 27 years old, a professional, you know, it's like I've got a checkbook, car keys, you know, you mean this is where, if I keep up what I'm doing right now, this is where I could be. And it rang so true for me that it was a wake up, a big wake up, that I'm putting up with things, I'm inviting behaviors, I'm allowing feelings inside me that I'm not taking responsibility for, and I'm feeling pain about all of it, and I'm not acknowledging that. So I think to have a really smart, articulate, creative woman with the ability to talk about things that were so deep and so powerful, and even to say who have considered suicide. You know, people still don't say that out loud very much. And so to capture this richness of devaluing yourself while having a great time and being engaged in life and kind of conveying the sense of power and also pain and sadness and confusion all at the same time. All at the same time. And I guess from the play, I'm still struck with like color and power. So, you know, when you were talking about, I really liked you talking about lack of joy. I know I've been periods in my life where I felt an utter lack of joy, and that the play was able to talk about all of this, and but with this tremendous sense of power, of spirit, of strength.
Somebody almost walked off with all of my stuff. Not my poems or a dance I gave up in the street, but somebody almost walked off with all of my stuff. Like a kleptomaniac working hard and forgetting while stealing. This is mine. This ain't your shit. Now, why don't you put me back and let me hang out in my own self? Somebody almost walked off with all of my stuff, and I didn't care enough to send a note saying I was late for my own solo conversation, or 2 sizes too small for my own tacky skirts. What can anybody do with something of no value on the open market? Did you get a dime for my things? Hey man, where you going with all of my stuff? This is a woman's trip, and I need my stuff to ooh and ah about daddy. I got a mainline number for my own now. Won't you put me back and let me play this duet with this silver ring in my nose? Honest to God, somebody almost run off with all of my stuff.
Yes.
We talked about how that piece walked off with all of my stuff.
Yes.
When we talked about it earlier, you know, it almost seemed exclusive as a woman. You know, you say, well, I know what that feels like. But as a man, I think as anybody in a relationship, I've also felt at the end of a relationship that all my stuff was gone.
Yeah.
You know, the stuff that you invest, the stuff,
Yes.
like everything you invest.
Yeah.
You know, so as a man, I could relate to that feeling of, wait, you know, and I think that causes us to, you know, when we enter into relationships, it causes us to hold back. Say, listen, I don't want to give all of my stuff away. Now. In case she leaves, then I'll be with nothing. But I think to really have a good relationship, you have to let it all go.
Gotta let it go.
I mean, it's tough, but you have to let it all go.
I want to really take the opportunity to talk about Tyler Perry.
I'm chomping at the bit on this one.
That-
You know, having been involved in black theater most of my life, theater and then later specifically black theater. When Tyler Perry first started coming with the plays, you know, a lot of the so-called serious black theater people like look down the nose at him. You know, I mean, we were doing August Wilson and Lorraine Hansberry, and then you know he had Medea. We were like, you know, that's not really theater. But I've since changed my mind because we were sitting with you know, Raising in the Sun and not that many people in the audience, and Tyler Perry's audience was so I think hopefully what I think that not to say anything about that play, but I think what Shakespeare used to do was his play would go like that. Some of it would go towards what they call the groundlings. Some of it would go up towards the people that were the more sophisticated people. And I think that if we can put those two together, we would have the perfect play. You know what I'm saying? The play should go two ways at the same time. But as an artist, you know, it's amazing. He's done more in theater and media than any black man in a long time.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think he's a valid artist, and he came from nothing.
Yes.
You know, he came from nothing, and he knows his audience. He knows that we like some good singing.
Yes.
We like some comedy,
Yeah.
and then the wit. The wit. I don't call it mother wit. The wit that he puts into the play.
I think that it brought a lot of people to the table, and a lot of people wouldn't have come to the table if it was something else other than a Tyler Perry film. They may not have even heard of Ntozake Shange or For Colored Girls When the Rainbow, who've considered suicide when the rainbow was enough. But at least it got people to the table, especially the younger generation. I also think that, you know, in this time when money speaks, Tyler Perry speaks. And because of that, this is why he was able to do that. And so he carried his weight. He produced something that looked a lot different than what he was used to producing. And I think that it spoke volumes about what's to come from Tyler Perry. Another point that I had made when I was sitting was that for the younger generation to come to the table and hear this, it's kind of like when the younger generation hears a song and it's got a hook by maybe Shaka Khan or Marvin Gaye. And they know the hook, but that's the first time they've heard it, and they don't understand that it's something that's come before them. So I see this movie as the remix of Ntozake Shange's play. It was something a little bit different, with a little more of a contemporary view, in order so that young people could come and see it in its own light.
So then why do you think he's so lambasted about what he's
Well,
doing?
didn't you talk about that though? Remember, you mentioned that whole idea that right now to be, the black man and to be doing well,
Right.
it's time to take a pot shot at you. I think part of that may be what's going on here, that he's so successful and he's doing so well. It's like, oh, we've got to strip him down. We've got to knock him down a few pegs. And so I think jealousy has always been rampant in our community in particular. But then, as you're saying, the whole artistic community is certainly talking badly about him.
Well, understand this. In Citizen Kane, Orson Welles was dog.
Yeah.
I mean, he was dog so bad that he couldn't make a movie for a long time. Cameron Crowe, he did a movie, Jerry Maguire. He was dog. So to me, I think it's wrong for us to say, well, Spike Lee made this comment or this person made this comment. You know what? Regardless, when you start rising to another level, you can't take everybody with you. Spike Lee cannot touch Tyler Perry. I'm sorry. When you think about August Wilson, I went to just about every play in Manhattan of August Wilson. Seven guitars, 2 trains running. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Jitney, I think me and my wife probably was like the only couple that was in there of color that appreciated his body of work. Now, if you go to a Tyler Perry at the Beacon or at Madison Square Garden, all our cousins are there.
Yeah.
Why? Because Tyler Perry understands relationship. Same thing with churches. You got to be able to relate, meet the needs. Our people need comedy. They need to feel good because we're here, and some of us are here, and so Tyler Perry can speak to all levels and break it down and make you feel good, even though you're spending your money. The other artists and directors are doing the same thing. Lucas, you name it, they're doing the same thing. So if they get hit, Swayze, he gets hit, all these people gets hit. But we have to understand, if he gets hit, we just got to pick him up. That's all. We still spend our dollars. So regardless of the context, it's about the quality, and it's about what you feel, and it's about how you feel inside. When you think about this sister here, the generation that's out now, if it wasn't for Tyler Perry to bring the awareness, relationship. And so as we move into the year 2011, we have to understand that relationships is what build community. One of my neighbors, he put his leaves out maybe two or 3 days ago. And I walked up to him, and he's a white guy, and I said, buddy, the city is done picking up brushes and leaves. They won't be back until spring, and like April. So, I mean, he didn't take it the wrong way. His dad was right there with him. And so maybe like a few hours later, I get a nice card saying, thank you for looking out. That's community. That's community. He said, I really appreciate the fact that you came over and let me know, because I would have got a fine. And yes, all the neighbors would have been upset because my leaves would have been on their lawn. People are spending money, and some of the older seniors, they don't have enough money to keep paying somebody to keep going out there and picking up leaves. So I took the authority as a person in the community to say, hey, this is what it's all about. So what we have to do about Tyler Perry, hey, if you don't like Tyler Perry, fine. Then you go over here and go see someone else. That's why they got different restaurants, different flavors
Exactly.
for your needs. That's it.
Exactly.
Sure.
I want to thank my guests, panelists here, Mr. Mark Henderson, Ms. Tamara Richardson, and Mr. Dirk Quentin Sutton. Thank you so much. Thank you, and tune into Frank Talk the next time. Peace.
An audience where you sink in and you really connect with the characters and you feel like what's happening to them is actually happening to you. That's how you know it's really working. And I think I want to go back to your point of the integration. The conclusion I came up with, and it's just art, it's not necessarily right or wrong, but it's one woman. Even though we have these women that represent 7 women of all colors, I think it's actually one woman. I think that she gets her solution when she integrates. She integrates. And if you have all the colors of the rainbow and you integrate, you come out with white light. And white light sort of represents understanding. So that was like the key to her, to integrate, put all the pieces of herself together.
That's very, very smart.